Hello, English 14. It's Wednesday. Right now, as I'm recording this, it's 6:55 a.m. So far, the Jordan children are quiet. We'll see how long that lasts. I'll pause if their little voices get loud. I wanted to pop in and make a quick little video for you about this short story before the day really gets going. You don't need to see my face because, as I mentioned, it's before 7 a.m. I just don't know that that's necessary. But it is necessary to be able to see this story and for us to think about it a little bit today. So that's what we're going to do. Before I get into the short story here, The Bear Came Over the Mountain by Alice Munro, I'm going to read you just something a little bit from your text. On page 28 of your writing fiction, A Guide to Narrative Craft, you can grab that if you'd like. Pause me, go get your book, or you can just listen. John Gardner writes, "Good writers may tell about almost anything in fiction except the character's feelings. One may tell the reader that the character went to a private school. One may tell the reader that the character hates spaghetti. But with rare exceptions, the character's feelings must be demonstrated. Fear, love, excitement, doubt, embarrassment, despair become real only when they take the form of events, action or gesture, dialogue, physical reaction to a setting. Detail is the lifeblood of fiction." Now, this came up in the last 2 weeks. This is really a similar concept to what Gutkin talks about when he talks about the dance, the scene, and then the embedding information, right? So we have something happening. We need to see the characters doing something. And then you could weave in the important information that we need to know about the characters through scene. So I paused for a second, had some little visitors. Now they're off making themselves breakfast. Hopefully that goes well. I'm going to keep talking to you. Okay, so we are in scene here right away, okay? The Bear Came Over the Mountain by Alice Munro. This story was originally published in the New Yorker in 1989, and then it came out in a book of short stories that Alice Munro wrote, and that came out a couple months later. Alice Munro is a Canadian writer, and she primarily writes short stories, which is really interesting. Most writers do not make a career out of writing short stories. Many literary fiction writers have books of short stories under their belt, but that is not their primary form. They have a book of short stories, probably when they wrote in grad school, and then they keep that tucked away and pump out a couple novels and then bust out a book of short stories in between a couple more novels, and that tends to be how it goes. However, Alice Munro is really unique in the fact that she almost writes exclusively short stories. I think she has 1 or 2 novels, but primarily she's a short story writer. She's really excellent at short stories. And so one of the reasons why I picked for you to read this particular short story is because she does showing and telling very well. She tells us some details, but she does it in a way that creates an image. She builds out whole characters. Her descriptions, her telling, does a lot of work. And that's the thing that's really important to keep in mind, is that we are not just telling for the sake of telling. Now, if you look at a work of popular fiction, something that is what would probably be in like a beach read category, you might see telling for the sake of telling. There might be 2 pages about a sunset just for the sake of a writer trying to show off a little bit. This isn't really what we're working for here, okay? We want everything that you tell the reader to be critically important. Okay, so here we go. We've got Fiona and we have Grant. They are a married couple and they are our main characters here. We learn a lot about Fiona. We learn a lot about her family. We learn a lot about her history and who she is as a person. This isn't just for fun. Okay, Alice Munro isn't just telling us about Fiona because she likes Fiona and she's a character she made up and this feels good and fun to her. We're getting this information because it's important. It matters for the rest of the story. All right, so here we are, Fiona and Grant. We're getting some information about Fiona. We know it's from the past. Okay, we kind of get the impression based on the description of Fiona and the use of pronouns that we're coming at this story from Grant's point of view. Okay, so we've got a third person perspective. Already within this first page feels closer on Grant. Okay, so we do not have necessarily an ensemble cast. Okay, we're looking at Grant really as our main information. Okay, so he's reflecting on Fiona and who she was, but I really want to get into page 3. Okay, so we get some insight into who Fiona was, what she looks like, what she acts like, who her family is, how they met, how they got married. The character of Fiona is building out. And the reason Alice Munro does this is because now she has to walk it back. Okay, because we're going to learn that Fiona has dementia. Okay, and so we need to see the whole Fiona first in order to understand what the Fiona now is like and what Grant's experience is like as the whole wife that he knew starts to fade away. Okay, so that contrast is going to be really important, and that's why we have those early details. That's why she told us all that stuff. Not because she likes description and she wants to prove that she's a good writer, but because it's critically important as she starts walking the character of Fiona back. Okay? Now, just a few things here before I start talking about something else, because I want you to do a little bit of exercise as you read this story. If you haven't read it before, in this week, let's say you're saving it for later the day, you can read it with these things in mind, or you could go back over it and just look. What I want you to do is I want you to find that balance as you're reading, and you can even apply Gutkin's highlight test and say, okay, hey, what's happening here? Where's the balance? What are the parts that are being told? What are the parts that are being shown? Where are the scenes? Where is the information? How is it woven together? That's the kind of reading that we need to be doing this term, okay? And actually, forever. I think it'll help you if you want to be a writer. Good writers are good readers. That's a cliche that you may have heard before and that you will probably hear again. And it doesn't mean that you like to read. It doesn't mean that you read a lot. It means that you are reading with a critical eye towards how the story is developed. It means that you are a close reader, not just reading comprehension, actually thinking about what is happening. How is this story unfolding? Where is the author's perspective? How are they teasing out this information? Why are they including the details that they've included? Why is that line like that? Why is this sentence like this? Why did they write it like this? Why did they structure it like this? And you want to be thinking about all of those elements as you're reading. Not just, oh, what's happening, but how do I know what's happening? How do I know how Grant feels? How do I know there's nostalgia? How do I know that we're dealing with a third person point of view, but it's close, right over Grant's shoulder? How do we know that? Now I want you to go through and figure it out. This is a little bit like forensic reading, okay? There are a few key lines here in the first couple pages that I wanted to talk about. Okay, so we've got Fiona. She sticks little sticky notes all over the house. Okay, that helps us see the scene. Okay, Grant is noticing the sticky notes. This isn't new. This is how Fiona works. Okay, she writes things down. She writes down ideas or things she's heard or little to-do lists. She likes to write out her schedule. However, the new notes are different. okay? Stuck under the kitchen drawers, cutlery, dish towels, knives. Couldn't she just open the drawers and see what's inside? Okay, who's saying that line? Couldn't she just open the drawers and see what's inside? That's not a narrator, that's Grant, okay? He's starting to wonder, what is going on with my wife? Okay, now instead of telling us, Grant struggled with confusion. He was often frustrated with Fiona. He didn't understand why she was making these choices, right? That would be telling us. But couldn't she just open the drawers and see what's inside? It's really more akin to a type of thought someone might have about their partner, okay? Why wouldn't you just do it this way? Then we move down, okay? We have a lot of this balance of showing and telling, okay? This is a thing she did. She went to town and phoned Grant from a booth to ask him how to drive home. She went for her usual walk across the field into the woods and came home by the fence line, a very long way around. She said that she'd counted on fences always taking you somewhere. Okay, we're being told what she did. She went for a walk, her usual walk. Key word, right? Usual. She's done this before. She goes on this walk a lot. However, she comes home the long way. She has to follow the fence. What does that tell us? It tells us that Fiona does not remember how to get home. Okay? So this is the part where Alice Munro shows us who Fiona was. She gives us a key piece of information, okay, in her word usual. So we move into the showing. She's going to show us. She doesn't say, for the last 10 years, Fiona has always done this walk, da, 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 da. She just tosses in the word usual, okay? She shows this to us. Then she tells us how Fiona came home. But that telling is very telling, right? So as you go through this story, I want you to do that forensic reading. What is she showing us? What is she telling us? How? Why? And as you move through the rest of the short stories this week and next week, I want you to be reading like that, okay? And then thinking about how you can apply what you've observed to your own writing. Sometimes, as you're drafting, it might make sense in your very, 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 very first draft, your early draft that no one's going to see, for you to just tell everything. Just spill it all out, Mommy, like a report. Mommy. Emerged. Did you hear that little voice? Okay. You might just want to tell it all. Then go through and say, all right, how could I show these different elements? How could I change this beginning and tease out the emotion? How could I shift this? There are lots of different ways to draft a short story, but sometimes when you're learning how to draft a story, it's easier to just tell a story, right? What would you say if someone said, tell me a story? Write it in your own voice, your actual speaking voice, right? Or record it like I'm doing here and then listen to it and type it out and change things and start crafting it, okay? So there's a difference between writing out a story and crafting a story, okay? And you need to do some crafting in your first draft that you're going to turn into your group, okay? But if you have a draft or two before that, that's fine. So this week you've got your scene and your setting. You might want to just write out in one paragraph what you think is happening in that picture. I want to take the raccoon picture. I want the raccoon to be visiting from, escaped from the animal control, and I want the actual story to really be about this animal control guy, and his marriage is falling apart, and he thinks he's going to lose his job, and he feels like he needs to prove himself, and like that's not crafting a story, but that might be getting the details of a story out, and then go through and craft it. Do the balance of showing and telling and teasing out the emotion and pulling out the details and saying, what words can I use that are going to really evoke the feelings that I want them to evoke? Okay? That's our plan for this week. More to come in the discussion boards. I wish you all the best. Happy reading.